Hi, so Nick from Vire Engines here. Just a better video perhaps of how to do your piston rings. So changing them over is pretty self-explanatory. You shouldn't do it in a cold area by forcing them apart. What you should have for the rings is a tool like this. It's absolutely perfect. I got this for about £5 on eBay, and it allows you to get the rings off instead of wearing out your thumbnails and splitting them. And you obviously take them off in sequence, put the new ones on. My recommendation, get them up to about 25 centigrade before you do that, and then your rings will be on. When you've got your pin, make sure it's a nice sliding fit and lube it up. If not, then clean it all out. So you don't want any resistance as this goes in. I've got a brand new pin here. I've got a brand new bearing, little end. The little end has got no pitting in it at all. It's all clean and smooth. And I've got my two spacer washers, which you don't want to lose. They're not critical, but they stop the pin floating around a bit too much. And here we are, we're on video, so I'm doing this live for you. So let's see if we can have this assembly done. I'm going to edit this down. So first job to do is get a sock around your conrod. That is to prevent any bits that you might drop going into the crankcase, which will be a bugger to fish out, but easy to get out if you've got this ready. Also, when the piston is wobbling around on here, it protects this skirt area, which otherwise may crack when it hits the casting. This is aluminium thin, this is cast iron thick. So ideally, when you put this in position, it's going to be at bottom dead center, but as you put it on, it's got to be up high. So to protect the bottom of the piston and stop you dropping the bits into the crankcase, you protect it with a lint-free rag like this. I'm just going to pick up the tripod here and show you the prep of the cylinder. So I've just washed this all out to make sure there's no grit from the honing left, and I've done the gasket, and I've put gasket sealant all over the bottom of the cylinder. That's because the areas that the gasket doesn't overlap, it's going to protect those areas from rusting, isn't it? Which is nice. And then you don't want any gasket sealant right near the rim. And what you do want is to be sure that you're all clean on this edge, and that I'll take that little bit of paint off actually. All clean on this edge, and put some oil in here. You're going to oil the piston before you lower this on. So I'm just going to get a little bit of blocking cloth in here, and I'm going to just take out that little bit of paint. I'll pause this. Right, back on track. That's all clean around the rim. I'm going to put a little bit of oil on here before it goes in. So just what I'm doing here is I'm simulating the engine in your boat. So you're probably going to have to get down on your stomach to do this, because mine's on the bench. I've propped it up with a bit of wood here, and I've got the advantage, haven't I, that I can sit down when I have to. So let's get this rolling again. So rag around the conrod. Yeah. Now obviously it's pegs face forwards, otherwise the rings open up and jam in the exhaust ports. So always bear that in mind. You've got 3 pegs, the bottom one faces forwards, the other 2 face forwards but slightly offset. So what we're going to do, I'm going to put a bit of clean white grease in the little end hole. The reason I do that is it helps on startup that you don't get dry metal to metal. It will smoke slightly for the first few minutes when you run the engine, but it also means that these washers will stick on the outside of the conrod. You'll see what I mean in a minute. So this is quite a manipulation. So you've got your big end, little end bearing in, you've got your rod ready, bit of grease on here will never hurt, and this will get tapped in. So that's a nice slide fit. Now what I want to do here is I want this first washer to stick on here. So I'm going to put a little bit of grease on the outside of that pin. I hope you can see what I'm doing, like a shoulder, and then put my washer on it. The grease will make it stick, and I've just got the pin level or slightly proud. Okay, now let's find the front pins again. Front is where the pin is, so I'm now going to put this on, and we will put a little bit of grease inside the race as well. I mean, it'll go from the outside as well, but here we go. So I'm going to wiggle this on, and this is a bit of a fiddle. You've got to kind of rock the piston and guide the pin in. Okay, so that's through. You don't want it all the way through because you've got the second washer to put in, remember? Okay, now this one is a little bit, you can get a view from the top through this porthole and feed the washer up, withdraw the pin if you need to, until you get it in the back, between the piston at the back. It's nice and slippery, this, isn't it? That's it. Right, I've got that feeding it in, and then I can rotate this until I've got the washer jammed. Now what I'm going to do at the moment is I'm going to stick a screwdriver up the back and rotate it round, and that will centralise the washer in the other end. So that's all the way through with a bit of luck. I might need to use a mirror, fiddle around until I've got that washer absolutely central. Let's get a bit of rag on here, it's so slippery. Don't be tempted to bash this, because if that washer is misaligned, it's not going to go in. I promise you. You'll just distort the washer and maybe peen over the end of the pin. So you do want to make sure this is a nice slip fit. It's just okay. I just realised a good tip here, which is that if you feed the pin in from the back instead, you will be able with a torch to see the washer's position on the shaft and tickle it round. I cheated there, I looked down the back, but that might be hard for you on the boat. So my suggestion is feed the pin in from aft, take the circlip out on the fore end, and you'll be able to see the centralisation nicely to get both of those washers in position. So I've got that in now, and that will just slip down, you see. So both washers are in. I'll slip that right to the back, and if it's in correctly, you should find about 1 millimetre clearance before you put in your clip. So here's my clip, circlip. Inspect these, make sure that they're good to reuse. If you want to be a perfectionist about it, you'll notice that on circlips, most of them get stamped from one direction, and they're slightly rounded on one side but flat on the other. Now, to resist the pin coming out, you want the sharp end facing the exit and the smooth end facing the pin. I mean, nobody recommends this, but I did some research on Wikipedia, etc., and I found this was worth doing. So that clip is in, but you now need to check it's not going to come out, and what you do is you just rotate it, take your pliers out, make sure visually it's in the slot, and I can see that is not. So what you want to do then is just put the tip of the pliers in, not all the way through. Okay, maybe the other way around. Yeah. Okay, and now with just the first millimetre poking out, now squeeze it together, can reorientate the tip, and now it's fully expanded. I can see both ends and the back are in there, and I can rotate that with no effort. So that is definitely in correctly. Bit of a fiddle. This is what you learn being an engine builder for decades, but it's very important. Okay, so now we've got the ring in. I should say the clip is already in at the back. Don't forget, you've got to have both, otherwise your pin is going to start moving out and jam in the port. You'll have a disaster. So just verify you've got both clips in position. They're not going to come out. All right, now at this point I am now going to lower the piston down into a safe place. So I'm going to rotate the crank down to bottom dead center, but I don't personally like the metal to metal feeling. So I'm going to put a little bit of rag, which helps jam this in to position when it's at bottom dead center. And I can remove that when the cylinder is over all three rings. So for now, I've just got that a nice buffer. That's at bottom dead center. Okay, now I'm going to put a mark on my flywheel so that I can see if it's moved. T, we'll say. Right, okay, you're getting this, I hope. So now here is the tricky bit. What you will need is a flat bladed screwdriver, clean tip please. Alright, and this is instead of using your thumbnails, which might break. And you're going to do is you're going to invert the cylinder, which I've got ready with the sealant. So it's got the sealant on here and it's sticky. I'm going to lower this down after I've oiled it, and we're going to pinch the rings together in sequence. Now here's the trick. When you pinch them, you want to make sure that the back of the ring is engaged, so the ring is coming towards the peg. Don't do it with the pin flush at the front. You want the ring to be sticking out away from the peg, okay? And then what you do is you drop the cylinder down on the back slightly first, so you're tilting the cylinder so that the back dips down about 1 millimeter before the front. And what this does is it stops the ring popping out at the back, keeps it proud at the front, and when you squeeze it together with your thumbs or the screwdriver, the whole ring goes in the slot, not just some of it. So now I'm going to find my 2-stroke oil, which could be any oil to be honest, but 2-stroke oil is pretty excellent. And we're going to smother the rings so we get a nice bit on startup, and of course it'll lubricate the piston. Now you want to work this oil into the rings. Get ready with your fairy liquid or whatever. I prefer to work without gloves for 2 reasons. First of all, when you're trying to use your fingernails to get these rings in, the gloves interfere. And secondly, with gloves, because these have got fairly sharp edges, it will tear the gloves, potentially leaving bits of rubber in the ring grooves, which you definitely don't want. So a nice bit of oil on the piston, over the top, all 3 rings. Those are going to start up lovely. And then finally, I'm going to realign my rings so the gaps line up with the pegs, because I've moved them out of the way now. Oh, buddy, yes, the middle ring is facing to the right, is it? Bottom ring forward, yeah. So there you go. Right. Okay, so as I say, push the ring so it comes out on the peg end. You're going to need to balance the inverted cylinder with your elbows as it comes down and tease it in with your fingernails. It's not easy, but you'll see. Okay, so let's get some of this grease off my hands, and a little bit of grease in the cylinder lip, just that critical area where it's going to start. And it was just a little bit of primer in there earlier. I just got that out carefully, so that's nice metal to metal. You may think I'm OCD about this, but if it's not right, it's not going to go down nicely. Now, when I first invert it, just leave it a while, give it a shake, because anything from your honing or whatever, if it drips out now, it's going to land on this surface, which you don't want bits of grit on here, because that's where the gasket's going down, right? So as long as nothing's coming out, I've got a little bit of water from flushing, that's fine. And then I'm going to put it down aft first, over the piston, and there's a bit of strength involved here. I'm doing it on my own, but to be honest, if you're not really strong, you see I'm pushing the 2 ends together. Give it a little bit of rotation if you want to, and that is now the first ring engaged. So now the second ring's time. push it forwards. There we go. The back's tilted down about 1 millimetre lower than the front, and I'm going to try get this in the slot. I think the rings come back a bit too early. Let's see what we're doing. I think it's going. Yeah, that's the second ring done. If it jams up, it's because you haven't got it in. Now the final ring, I'm going to... Can I zoom in without disturbing this? Oh, it's a bit tricky. Let's have a look. I'd love for you to get a view of this ring. There we go. Right, I think you can see it a bit better. So the ring is open. The ring is towards me, out of the slot. The back of the cylinder is down about 1 millimetre, so it's grabbing the back of the ring. I'm now going to push my 2 fingers on and then just allow that to come down, and as it comes together just give it a little bit of rotation and that's on, and there we are. We're all done now. Look how free that is. Okay, so now it's time to remove my rag. So I'm going to stroke this piston, turn the crank a bit, get the piston up, take my rag out the way. There's nothing caught on the surface it's the gasket's going to stick to, and I can slide down, line up the studs, and there we go. I think that's about it. That's right. Yeah. There's a little tap might be required where the gasket goes through the crankcase holes. Just square that up. Okay, here it is again. I've just taken the cylinder off. I wanted to clean a bit of stuff around where this plugs into. I painted the crankcase, and I realised that that thin layer of paint was slightly obstructing the bottom of the neck going in. So I've taken it off. It gives you an opportunity to see my technique once more. So I'll do it without the towel this time. Bottom dead centre. Sealant on here, all clean. Ready to invert. Okay. Anything coming up now? No. Tip the back of the cylinder down. Got the ring pulley forward and lower it on. That's it, the back is gone down. The first ring is the easiest because you can lay it down at quite an angle on the back. As you see the ring proud, that's it. So that's, oh, come out, it was on. Bit of rotation there. Got this light in my eyes which is not helping. Right, next one, just to push the ring forwards so it's ready about equal on the pin. Let's just get that forward. There we go. The back's come down and locked that into position, and then just a little squeeze and it's on. Now the final one, equalize the ring, make sure it's forwards. There we go. Did you hear that click? That's the back of the cylinder coming down, locking the back in place. So now I can just squeeze with my thumbs. I might need to take a bit of the weight of the cylinder to help. And if it's jamming, lift the cylinder up, can rock it, get the ring in, and that's it. That looks good to me. Bit of rotation. It's coming down nicely. Last check to see the gasket's nice and clean, that area, which it is. And we're down. Okay, that's it. Now, there you go. She's all down, ready to tighten up these nuts. Now, if you are replacing the nuts, which I wouldn't advise, it's best not to use these normal height nuts, which will go on after you've got the cylinder down. The original nuts are a bit taller, so it's worth cleaning those up and reusing them. Now, in order to get them on, you have to lift the cylinder up a few millimeters, so get the front ones on before you tighten anything down, and they don't need lock washers under them. The reason that they're taller is because if you use standard height nuts, there's a good chance you'll chew them up while you're torquing this down, and you can get a little bit more torque on the higher nut. It's less likely to round off the nut, and because they're steel and not stainless steel, they're a bit stronger. So don't replace the original nuts with stainless steel ones, because it's just not so reliable for servicing in the future. Okay, so there's the last tip for you. When you tighten them down, just do them in sequence. And what I always do is put the nut on here with the spanner, and I feel how easy it is to turn the crank. Okay, and it mustn't get stiffer when you've tightened up the nuts. If it's getting stiffer, there's something wrong with the alignment. Okay, the engine should be as easy to rotate when the cylinder is loose as it is when all nuts are torqued down. So the other tip you can use when you want to get a bit more torque on a spanner, say you've got your 13mm here, is you'd use them in a sort of combination. So you get ring spanners together and get a little more torque on them. But the maximum you can do with a standard sort of 5-6 inch spanner is probably good enough. On the back one, the length of the spanner is basically telling you how much torque to put on. But if you do want to torque it up a bit extra, then you can use a combination like this, which means that in a tight space you can get a lot of torque on, whereas if you had full space you could do that torque. So if you're cramped for space and you want to get the torque a bit higher than you can do, think about putting spanners together and doing your torque. And maybe after an hour's running, when you want to check it's commissioned, just check the torque of your 3 nuts there. On a Vire 12 it's got 4 nuts, on a Vire 7 and 6 it's got the 3 nuts. Okay, I think that's enough for today. I could go on for hours about this engine, all the stuff I learned over 20 years, but I don't want to bore you guys too much. But rest assured, if I rebuild it, this is a lot of stuff I'm doing which you probably wouldn't figure out if it was your first engine or 2 of these. Anyway, do visit my shop and support me, because I'm supporting all of you. That's vireengines.com. Thanks.